Okay, so I'll just introduce myself to start. My name is Sydney Bihn, and I graduated last spring from Kent State University with a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering. I currently work for Northrop Grumman out in Arizona, but I can just start with kind of some background on my experiences at Kent State. So I started at Kent State in 2014, so I was actually in school for 6 years before I finally got my bachelor's degree. And for the first 3 of those years, I was studying middle childhood education with a concentration in math and science. Since I was very small, I always wanted to be a teacher. A bunch of people in my family are teachers. I would have been like a fourth generation educator. But I kind of hit a point in my schooling where I had kind of wondered if there was maybe something else or something more. And I feel like a lot of people kind of run into that same experience in undergrad, because you do have a lot of commitment, time, money, energy into studying something. And so to be 3 years in and like one semester away from graduating and just to throw it all into something else is can be very challenging. But my biggest thing was, if I don't do something now, I'll always wonder if there was something else out there for me, and what's one semester in your life in the scheme of things. And I had looked around. I had talked to some career counselors that they have at Kent State, but I ended up meeting with one of the counselors in the aeronautics building, and they connected me with Dr. Stringer, and he's the one that told me all about the aerospace engineering program. And here we are now. But in the end, it was, I was 3 years into education. I decided engineering would be a great tie between the math and science that I love, but also actually using it in the real world, I guess, real world applications of that math and science. And I also thought that in itself would maybe give me the challenge that I felt like I was missing. And so I decided just to go for it. Like, what's one semester? So I took one semester and I loved every minute of it. It was everything that I wanted. I felt more like myself than ever before. Ended up being a great fit for me. I'm really glad that I made the switch. Kent State does a really great job of supporting students in situations like that, in my opinion. Obviously, I was signing up for 2 extra years of undergrad, but they also worked really hard to get me in that first graduating class of aerospace engineers, so I was able to do the degree in 3 years instead of the typical 4. I definitely appreciate that about Kent State. I definitely had that feeling of students first mentality when I was there. Well, to be honest, one of the biggest things that helped me prepare for life after Kent State was the fact that I was in education before switching to engineering. As much as in the beginning when I had first switched, I was kind of hard on myself, like, why didn't you figure this out sooner? Like, you wasted 3 years of your life. But now, in the real world, I look back on all of those experiences and I think they've benefited me in a way I never would have imagined. So even though I'm not a teacher now, the skills that I learned in that program about communicating with people of any type of person, right? Information, taking criticism, things like that, being organized and prepared and adaptable. Those are all skills that you get as a teacher, and I feel like that really translated well into my career now. So that in itself, I consider, I don't necessarily regret those 3 years now looking back. But outside of like coursework and stuff, obviously I was super involved in all the other stuff going on at in the engineering program. It's in a lot of clubs and organizations. I would say if I had any suggestion for anyone, join one of those, like the Rocket Club or drone team. They have so many now, I'm sure. Very often you're going to end up in your job day one, you're given something to do, and you look at that and you're like, what? What do you want me to do? I have never done this before. I have no idea what to do. And that's exactly what all those projects are. They give you this prompt and you look at it and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. But you figure it out. You teach yourself all these really cool things. You learn from your teammates. All of that is basically what life after school is going to be like as an engineer. So I work for Northrop Grumman Space Systems. So I am a manufacturing engineer, which that's a plus to the aerospace engineering degree is you could basically do any engineering after that. There's a lot of avenues you can go. I knew, I wouldn't say early on, but maybe like a couple years in that manufacturing was a good spot for me because it's really dynamic of a field. There's not like one thing that you have to do all day long. It's very dynamic. So for me, every day I walk in the door and I have no idea what's going to happen, which is kind of crazy because I'm a planner and a list maker. But usually the list is like there's 3 versions of it by the end of the day. But it's very dynamic. As a manufacturing engineer, one of your big goals is support your team that's building satellites, right? But also creating projects and continuous improvement things to make everything run better, whether that's for the workers themselves or to make the product better, faster, more efficient, better quality, whatever it is, you're always working on things like that. So that could be it could be something super technical, it could require designing a new tool, or it could be something like super simple, like ordering those little cushion mats so their feet don't get fatigued all day, right? You could do all kinds of things. Some are like quick like that, and some take a lot of time and research. So manufacturing was like the perfect fit for me because you do a million. If you sit down at your desk and do one thing for an hour, that's amazing. So like the days fly by. Having the engineering and the engineering technology so intertwined is a huge asset to Kent State and something very unique. And I see very often in my job, because as a manufacturing engineer, I help design engineering create things so that they are actually manufacturable. And that's definitely, there is almost a language barrier there, right? They'll design things and I look at that and I'm like, there is no way we can actually make that. Or, that doesn't fit on our machine or whatever it is. So there's always that disconnect. And so Kent State really does do a great job of making sure that you're not just building something because this is what you want to build, but it's actually buildable and useful to the people using it. A message I should have heard sooner in my life would be dream big and just go for it. Sometimes, just your parents telling you that isn't enough and you just have a lot of self-doubt, and it takes a while to be bold and to be confident enough to take a chance on yourself. But you'll definitely surprise yourself on where you end up.